Kilo Charlie 9, Victor, Kilo Victor, from Kilo 2, Kilo X-ray Kilo.
The X-ray Kilo station, come back with your call again, please.
Yes, good morning. It's Kilowatt 2, Kilowatt X-ray Kilowatt. The name is Ken, King Easy Nancy, and we're located in central North Carolina. Go ahead.
Roger, Roger. And where in North Carolina?
Pretty much toward the center of the state, in the Greensboro area. Go ahead.
Roger that, Ken. I spent a few years around Fayetteville, Fort Bragg, not in the service, but in commercial radio, a little radio station right beside Fort Bragg that we worked for a while. And then we actually went to Fayetteville from Florida and did work for the WFLB in Fayetteville. I don't know if you're familiar with that market.
No, that's not our market. It's about 3 hours drive to Fayetteville. I was there in the fall, but we don't get their local markets. Mostly Greensboro. We're actually closer to Winston-Salem, famous for tobacco products. In fact, the town I live in is called Tobaccoville. It's about 15 miles north of Winston-Salem, kind of in the country. I wonder where you were in Florida. We lived on the Gulf Coast, a town called Punta Gorda. It's about 50 miles south of Tampa. You've got a booming signal in here. I didn't look you up yet on QRZ to find out exactly where you're located. But very nice signal. I was reading the mail a little on your last contact, so I understand that you're into broadcasting and particularly audio, and it certainly shows in excuse me, in your signal and audio quality. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah, we hometown is West Palm Beach. We're on the other side there, and spent our childhood there, and probably left West Palm at 21 to spread our wings in the broadcast world through to Fayetteville, and then over to the Fort Bragg station, and then we had a chance to move along. We went to that Fort Bragg station had a chain. It was part of a chain called Smiles Broadcasting, and so we went to work for the home office, so to speak, and traveled with the vice president of the chain around to. We had 7 radio stations. That was the limit at the time, and so we would travel to the different radio stations, and he would work with the sales department, and I would work with the production department. And then he unfortunately had a heart attack, and kind of slowed him up some, and so I didn't like the part about traveling by myself at that point. So it was time to move along, and so then I had an opportunity to go to I'm not sure, someplace north, or WHAS here in Louisville. And I had lived in Nashville for a few years when I was 16, and I really enjoyed the weather there, and I figured Louisville wasn't that far away, and the weather would probably be pretty similar, so I just grabbed Louisville and WHAS in 1970, and I was production director for WHAS radio from 70 to 79, Roger.
Yeah, QSO, Jim. The information in QRZ correct? New Albany, Indiana. Go ahead.
Roger, Roger. Yeah, we're about 3 miles from downtown Louisville on the Indiana side of the mighty Ohio River.
Okay, very good. Well, I used to fly through that airport all the time. I did a lot of traveling. I was in management and technology consulting the last 10, 11 years of my career, which was spent mostly in IT. Sounds like you were on the production side as opposed to the technical side, but obviously you picked up a lot of technology as well. So, stand by. Sorry. So we did a lot of traveling every week. We'd come home on the weekends pretty much and be at clients during the week. Mostly by air. But there was, when I lived in Florida, there was a client I had for about a year and a half in West Palm. And that was, at the time it was called CSR. Their building materials, mostly concrete, ready mix in that area, but they owned quarries, and it was actually quite a big company. They changed the name later, I guess about around 2005 to from CSR to Rinker. But they were pretty well known in that area of Florida for the big orange cement mixers. Go ahead.
Oh, roger that, roger that. So you were in West Palm for about a year and a half?
Yeah, affirmative. Stayed right there by the airport at the Hilton during the week, and then drove back and forth on the weekends. Go ahead.
Roger that, roger that. My dad was a block layer, a concrete and block laying, and he, for a period of time, worked up around Cape Kennedy. When they were building the launch pads up there, he did some work on that O'Galley area that he stayed in, and he would go up on a Monday and come back on a Friday. So we would see him on the weekends there for quite a few months as they built that. But yeah, concrete work is not. I realized at an early age not something that I wanted to do. It was very, very difficult, and his hands had problems from the. Well, I think part of that was his experience in the Pacific and the war. But it caused some skin irritations, and then the concrete further irritated the skin, you know, and so anyway, I didn't think that I wanted to do much concrete work as to follow my father. So, and I did. My grandfather had a little farm. He came to live with us when I was about 6, and he built a little farm about a half-mile away in some what they call muck. I don't know if you're familiar with muck, but muck is a real black soil that's just excellent for growing almost everything, you know. And so you know, he was there, and I would go to visit him. He would go down there like in the morning, and you know, he raised all kinds of stuff, and he had this glass house which was actually built out of window frames, and a lot of cardboard boxes in it, and some of those boxes had a bunch of electronic parts, telephone headsets and stuff, and I didn't think about it at the time, but they had some giant tubes. I later found out that he was an amateur radio operator, and I mean, to the point that he met Marconi, and he was doing his radio thing before the FCC, Roger.
Very good. That goes back a ways. That's a great story. I wonder if it's going to be on your YouTube page there. It looks like a very interesting documentary you're putting together. Wonder what you're running. You're the strongest signal on the band coming in here, really barreling in. We're running an ISP 7300 into a Meritron 811H, which goes up to our G5RV about 50 feet up. And we're about to start a microphone experimentation project. Got several parts on order. Nothing as extravagant as yours, just kind of going to try some dynamic microphones. Of course, the ICOMs normally support condenser or electric microphones, but we're putting a cable together with a blocking capacitor, and we'll try out a bunch of different microphones. So let me know what you're running there, Jim. Certainly sounds great. KC9VKV from K2KXK.
Roger, Ken. If I were you, I wouldn't change that audio. You have a beautiful audio EQ. What we're doing here is this is a homebrew condenser microphone into an ART preamp, which gives us the phantom supply, and from there to a third octave equalizer, and then up to the tabletop with a remote control that's got a 6-position rotary switch to select the radio that we're going to run, and then a toggle on, toggle off talk button, and then into the Yaesu 990, older Yaesu 990, and that's a 2.4, and we're trying to stretch it to a 3, running a little steeper EQ curve than their roll-off curve in the 990, and then from the 990 into the Heathkit SB220, and then up to our inverted V dipole. Roger?
Yeah, very good. Well, it's doing a great job. And thanks for the comment on the audio. We were just using the hand mic that comes with the IC7300. We just put this amplifier online. It's the first time I've ever run an amplifier on HF. I've been licensed since 1963, but haven't spent all that much time on HF, and we haven't been active at all in the last 15 years or so. So just got back on the air in January, put the station together. I did have some initial problems when I put the amplifier on. We're running about 500 watts at the moment, and some RF in the shaft. Part of that, I think, was the balun on my G5RV, which I eliminated, and I used a bunch of ferrite clip-ons. Seems to be under control. My audio sounds good. That must mean I don't have any RF on it. The outstanding problem I have right now is kind of strange. As I said, I'm an old IT guy, and love to play around with that end of the hobby. So we've been running Ham Radio Deluxe, kind of as a base to interface to things like my SDR, which I use as a PAN adapter in the logging system and so on. But when I'm running the amplifier, the Ham Radio Deluxe kind of gives up and loses its connection, its USB connection, which is interesting because none of the other software that's running on a separate USB port has any problem. So I'm not sure if it's a particular function of the way that the IC7300 is talking, but we'll have to try to scare that down. I don't know if you have any experience on that. Go ahead.
Well, Ken, I'll tell you, the more stuff you hang out in the audio circuit, the front end of your radio, the more inclined it is to pick up other things, particularly when you start running the power. That power tends to try to create fields within the Radio Shack. I would advise, if you could, I don't run the transformers, but I do run a choke, 21 foot of cable on a 4-inch roll, and that choke prevents the RF from trying to come back down the transmission line if you're not running a balun. Balun to me is just something to burn up. It just gets in the way. Unbalanced inverted V works just fine. I don't know if you copied the mail on our tuning procedure, but we put that. Make sure that choke's in there just as soon as you can after it. You make connections with your dipole, and then we tune the SWR on the ground side. Work to always minimize SWR on the ground side and bring it on frequency on the high side, and we're back and forth until we reach 1.01 to 1 standing wave, and we're on frequency. Roger?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, we're going to have to play with a choke. I don't have enough line at the moment to use. I'm going to have to get another piece of RG213, and I've got a coupler. Yeah, I did, especially once I took the balun out, I was concerned about RF on the shield, and of course it is lying on the ground. It's going to get buried, actually, now that the weather's warmed up. As I said, I just put the station together. But nothing on the, I've got nothing on the audio side. This is just the plastic hand mic going into the radio, so there's nothing, not a lot of paths for the audio to get in. It mostly seems to be between my computer and, or just my computer. So I'm going to have to start putting a bunch of ferrite beads on everything that's connected to the computer. I'm going to have to order another set. But that's no problem to do. We'll see how that works. Yeah, I guess the... so do you have your choke up at the connection to the dipole, or at the ground when it runs down to the ground? Go ahead.
It's down the. We're using a tower, and those inverted V's are about 2 to 3 feet away from the tower where they make connection with the transmission line. And we use. I don't know if you're familiar with split bolts. But split bolts is what they use on power transformers to make connection there, that three-phase coming out. Those are split bolts. Lifetime connection is probably somewhere around 150 years. So rather than trying to get up there and solder all that stuff, we just use split bolts to make connections with the antenna and the transmission line. It does great. And then for the most part we're down maybe 10 or 15 feet, and then we hit the choke. And then we're, and that choke is cut in line. It's not one piece from the radio to the antenna. It's from the radio to the bottom of the choke, and then the choke has got a connection, and there's a barrel, and then there's another barrel coming out of the choke on up to the antenna. And that gives you flexibility and gives you the ability to actually do some of your tuning. I did some of my early experimentations with a little MFJ analyzer, so I could just be right at the bottom of the tower, when I was doing that, as opposed to having to come into the Radio Shack and all that stuff. But when you really get close, then you want to switch over to your internal monitoring, your watt meter, SWR meter. In my case, it's an MFJ 989C. And I'm going through the tuner part for my 80. My 80 is a difficult dipole to get to. So I just use the antenna tuner for that, and I go to bypass for everything else, and I pick up a 6-position rotary switch that has all my other dipoles connected to that. So, and then when you get close, you want to switch over to your, if you're using a tuner, switch over to the SWR bridge and the tuner, or your internal metering anyway, and to make your real critical adjustments. Because when you get down to 1.01 to 1, if you make any kind of change, that SWR is going to start coming off, because it's a very delicate balance there, matter of fact, when if it snows and you have any buildup, your SWR is going to go up, because you are actually sitting there right on perfection, Roger.
Yeah, 100% agree. KC9VKV from K2KXK. Yeah, we have a rig analyzer, antenna analyzers, essentially does the same thing. I don't know which MFG you were talking about. Mostly I use this one with the computer because it's not one of their more expensive ones. It won't do sweeps. If you're doing multi-band antennas, you can only do one frequency at a time, which if you're doing dipoles that are cut is perfect. But if I want to do a sweep, because I'm doing multi-band antennas, I either have to do it from inside the shack on the computer, or take a laptop out with me to the antenna site, which is no problem. And I can sweep whatever frequency range I want to. We don't have, the only thing we've got up right now is a G5RV. And while it's close at 20 meters, which is where it was originally intended to be, it really needs to be tuned on every other band. It's pretty good on 40, but on 80, there's no way. Although actually, at 3.8, it's perfect. Well, no, I should say below 80 meters. It gets down below 1 to 1, but of course there's no frequency that matches it there that we can use. We are going to work on, hopefully this week, putting up an OFCD, about 133 feet, bed a third way down with a Ballon Designs 4-to-1 Ballon. But I think, having spoken to you, it confirms what I already knew, that once I took out that Ballon, which I think has improved things, because it was just a crummy little coil of not even coax, just some enameled wire. Worked okay with 100 watts, but putting 500 watts into it was more than it could take. Didn't burn up or anything, but it certainly wasn't doing its job, and I was getting all kinds of RF. But I think I'll get some additional coax and a couple of connectors and put that in line. It makes sense. I can do it. The ladder line comes down 33 feet. So I've got about 20 feet of coax vertically. So that should work if I get some more coax and can put it right in line there. We'll give that a try. KC9VKV. By the way, I'm using the Palstar AT2K manual tuner, which I got when I got the amp. It seems to be a good combination. KC9VKV, K2KXK.
Roger, Ken. Back on the microphones topic, I found that condenser mics give you the best frequency response. The top-end articulation on a condenser mic is just much superior to that of a dynamic. It's kind of like opening the door and walking into a room as opposed to hearing things through the door. The condenser mic is much more articulated, and articulation is going to help you from the standpoint of hearing what folks hearing what you're saying. It's a definition, top-end definition of your speech, and that's tremendously important. Not only in just rag chewing, but in DXing or whatever you're doing, And so if you start with the condenser mic, and then, if you use like a preamp, like the ART preamp, it's very, very transparent, gives you input control, output control, plus phantom power, and then come out of that into an equalizer, and then the equalizer gives you the ability to be on the roll-off side, as opposed, not necessarily roll-off, but in a majority of the situation, since the condenser mic is giving you all of the frequencies, then you can pick and choose the ones you want through the equalizer, and a 10-band, third octave equalizer, 10-band, gives you so much latitude as far as tailoring the exact frequencies characteristics of the voice that you're looking for. So with any luck at all, you can come up with an EQ curve that works not only for rag chewing but also for DX and contesting and all kinds of things. I guess what I'm saying is when you start with a condenser mic, you get everything, and then you can roll off what you don't want. Whereas with a dynamic microphone, you're starting off with a somewhat lower top end that's not anywhere near as articulated as it is with a condenser mic.
Yeah, very good. I understand that. Although I don't have first-hand experience stopping that you do, or very many people do. Um, but I thought we'd start giving it a try. I'm not sure if this mic is a condenser mic or an electric mic. I do know that ICOM supplies phantom power on the mic pin itself because they don't run dynamic mics. And if you use a dynamic mic, you've got to block that phantom power out. Go ahead.
Roger. Well, an electret is a condenser microphone. It's just a type of condenser microphone. This is an electret condenser microphone, you know. The element is probably about $1.98, right?
Yeah, exactly. I had an old D104 from back in the day, and of course, all these new rigs are looking for low impedance at the microphone. But there's a gentleman up in New York, W2ENY, I think is his call, that sells, among many other things, replacement elements for the D104, and I put one in, and it was great. It sounded great with 100 watts, but as soon as I put the amplifier on, that metal stand and bass, the metal bass and the metal microphone, it's just one big antenna for the stray RF in the shack, and it's not usable at the moment. Now maybe if I clean up the RF and the choke and some other things, I may be able to use that mic. Go ahead.
Roger, Roger. Yeah, it sounds like if you just put a 0005 bypass condenser from the audio out, is that an amplified D104 or just direct?
Well, it was amplified, but that's all bypassed with the new element. It's just direct at this point.
Oh, Roger, Roger. Well, 005 bypass off the high side of the audio to ground solves a multitude of problems, Roger.
Okay, very good. I'll give that a try. I don't have any components, and with Radio Shack on, that's a problem. I guess I just need to go online and buy an assortment of capacitors and resistors. You can't buy one capacitor, that's for sure. Now, would that be 005 microfarad, I guess?
Yeah, it's just a bypass capacitor, small ceramic, and that should take the RF to ground, which is the primary problem. Mainly, I mean, if you had a stock D104, a D104 wants to work, a stock element D104 wants to work into a high impedance. Usually folks just run them direct, and what happens is that when you run a D104 into a 600 ohm load, you lose all the bottom end, and then it becomes very shrill, and so that's not exactly what you want. But if if you use a matching transformer from high impedance to low impedance, that can work that way. If you're amplified, then you really don't have a problem because the output of the amplifier is ready to go to high impedance or low impedance. And you won't have any frequency shift if you use the amplifier output, Roger.
Yeah, very good. Or, of course, you could change the element and just use the housing in the grip-to-talk stand. Go ahead.
Roger that. Roger that. But where you are now, man, gosh, is that a hand mic?
Yeah, that's the hand mic that comes with the rig. And I don't know if you're familiar with the IC7300, but it's got several audio controls built in. It's got a equalizer, so to speak. That is to say, you can adjust what they call bass up and down and treble up and down. So it's really just a two-channel equalizer. Plus, of course, you can determine the roll-off frequencies. There are three what they call transmit bandwidth settings 1, 2, and 3, which you can adjust to be wherever you want. Obviously, for sideband, we're using the widest one, which I believe I've got set to 100 on the low cut and 2900 on the high cut. 2900 is the top that it will allow you to roll off at. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I've seen. Go ahead.
Roger. Well, the first thing I would do would be to take my trusty notepad, and I would go into my menu, get in there, and see exactly what you have set for the EQ at the moment, and make sure that you make a note of all those settings. You know, everything that's involved, any kind of compression, any kind of equalization, make notes of that, so you can always return to this mode, this operation, because in my estimation, this is probably as close as you're going to get, because it is just super. So make notes of all that stuff so you've got it and you can come back to it if you get lost down the road. Roger?
You know, that's an excellent suggestion. I will definitely do that. The other thing I can do is this rig has the ability to back up its settings to an SD card. So before I start monkeying around with it, I'll probably do that so I can always restore it. But yeah, it's a simple matter to write it down. It's actually probably more effective, because if I restore it, I might be restoring some stuff that I don't want, depending on when I did the backup. Yeah, it's just a hand mic, and I think I've got a little decrease in the bass response and a little increase in the treble response. Now, it doesn't tell me what the center frequencies that it's actually adjusting are, so it's just bass and treble, man.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Just make note of what it is, so you can always come back to that. And if that is an electret, then what I would do would be to proceed on with an electret, but I would go for like we're using a swing arm here, and that's the only kind of mic holder that will really allow you to get into put that mic wherever you want it. I mean, the limitations of a desk mic are just tremendous. So with a swing arm, you have almost no limitations. Roger?
Yeah, excellent. In fact, I've got mine coming today. It's going to be delivered probably within the hour. That cable, a dynamic microphone, just a $20 microphone that got very good reviews on some ham stations. I do have to make up a cable, an XLR to the mic cable. I've got a foot switch coming. So yeah, obviously holding a hand mic is not conducive to multitasking operation, logging, QRZing, etc. So I've already made that determination. It's very good advice. As I say, I've also got a little isolation mount coming, but that won't be here for a week or so. So we'll have to use a hard mount until I get that. Go ahead.
Roger that. And when you make that conversion, I'm assuming that your microphone is XLR out, 3-conductor XLR out. When you make the conversion, you're going to have to take one of the high sides to ground when you go to an unbalanced situation.
Yeah, roger that. And for a dynamic mic, I've got to put a capacitor in line with the hot side to block the phantom voltage coming out of the ICOM. Go ahead.
Well, allegedly. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't,
Oh, really? Interesting. What I've read is that if you don't do that, the voltage just sucks the element and it doesn't respond. Go ahead.
Possibly. I'm not real familiar, but I can't think that I usually ever did that. But then again, I haven't used dynamic mics in a number of years. you know, because I just have found that condenser mics are so much more articulated than the dynamics that the only reason I would use a dynamic would be in some kind of an emergency, and I can't figure out what kind of emergency that would be. So anyway, that would work out. You should be, if you go to you know, I would say part of your experiment should be an electret microphone that you can set in there and use the same EQ settings that you're running on your hand mic. Roger?
Very good. Go ahead, Breaker. Yeah, real good, John. Solid copy. You're certainly not as strong as Jim, but I don't wonder how much power you're running out of the 811H. That's the amp that I've got here. And I had a 718, which I really liked, but just parted with it to fund the 7300, which I like even more. Didn't get the full call. I think it was WB2. Could you give me the suffix again? This is K2KXK. Okay, well, let me pass it over to Jim, see how he's copying you. KC9VKV with WB2GMY. This is K2KXK.
Roger, he is in my noise level.
Okay. Well, John, Jim's not picking you up. You're in his noise level. He's out in Indiana. I'm in North Carolina. So I'm not sure which way your end-fed dipole is radiating. But I don't think it's obviously not favoring Jim. I can copy your Q5, but since Jim can't hear you, I'm going to continue with him if that's all right with you. Audio sounds good on the 718, and I was looking at that antenna myself. So my antenna's, I guess it's 73 feet, fed with their little 9-to-1 balance. That may be a future project. Right now we're running a G5RV, and we are planning to put up an off-center fed dipole hopefully this week to cover the north-south directions. So I'll pass it back to you, John, see if there's anything we can help you with, and then we'll get back to Jim. WB26MY with the group K2KXK. Yeah, okay, John, real good. Well, if we're still on, when you hook one of those G5 RVs back, break in again, and we'll give you a report. 73s, rig sounds good, and I tell you, I'm sure that I've not done a comparison between the 718 and the 7300 in terms of sensitivity. The 7300 obviously has a lot more filter options and etc. But my $100 SDR Play SDR receiver is almost as good as the 7300 receiver. So I'm not sure whether that's a great comment on the SDR Play or a knock on the the 7300. Anyway, back to Jim. I was curious about this phantom voltage issue. Apparently only ICOM does that, puts the phantom voltage on the mic, the hot mic connection. So you wouldn't need to block it for any other kind of rig. Are you saying you've run ICOMs without doing that? KC9VKV, K2KXK.
No, I have no experience with ICOMs. Yaesu does it, and let's see. I was just trying to think. I'm coming 2900 Yaesu is what I use for 2 meters, and I just that's one of the radios that I have on my 6-position rotary switch. But I am bridging into that. When I come out of the 3rd band equalizer, I'm at line level. Excuse me. So I have to do some attenuation to go into the front end of these radios, and a lot of these radios are very persnickety about messing with inputs other than their microphone. You have to be very careful that you don't wind up with a bunch of hum going in there. And I have found that I can bridge in with a 10,000 ohm resistor. So it's actually a T-pad. I'm bridging out of my my equalizer with 10,000 ohms, and I'm bridging into my my Yaesu 2900 with 10,000 ohms, and then I'm running about 1 k ohm to ground between the two. So I'm keeping that radio well above ground. So what happens is when you start getting to 600 ohms on that ground, it starts to want to hum. So I'm going to keep my gain above, my resistance above that, so it doesn't get much activity to ground. Roger?
Yeah, very good. Well, I was actually, my initial plans when I started thinking about this microphone project was to run it all through the accessory socket on the back of the IC7300. But I was very surprised when I looked at the pinout of that 13-pin socket and there's no mic input. I'm sure you know why, but there's a modulator input, which is a high impedance input, and of course the push-to-talk interface, but I can't put a microphone in there apparently. Go ahead.
Roger. Well, that is a high-level input. Your low-level input is the mic input. So, that's what you want, though. I mean, well, depending on whatever, But if you're going to run a mic, you could just run it in the front end. And if you're like me, you're at a high level, then you could just bridge into your, into the back end there at not at 10K, but probably lower than that. But anyway, there's a resistor for all occasions, and you're right about maybe getting a large assortment of resistors and capacitors from eBay at one time, and then you've got a smorgasbord to deal with there, as opposed to 1 or 2 items on the resistor side and 1 or 2 items on the condenser side. Roger?
Oh yeah, I'd get eaten alive with shipping charges, so I'm going to do that. Probably do it today, as a matter of fact. I was surprised that they didn't give you the option, is all I'm saying, to have the low impedance mic level in that 13-pin plug or socket. I guess it's because if you're going to use a microphone, like on the front, you need the shielding and so on, and the odds of putting the shielded cable on that 13-pin socket are not very good. I just thought it would be make a neat package to not have anything plugged into the front of the radio and coming off the boom. Just put the boom connection into an adapter and make the XLR connection, and of course the push to talk as well. It will not be go into the front mic socket at the moment.
Roger that, roger that. Well, it looks like our conditions are kind of shifting around a little bit there. And we do have a Qso-Vlog page on YouTube where we do Qsos, and we've been rolling a little tape on our Qso here, and probably be posting this maybe in the next couple of days or so. So you'll be able to hear the grand and glorious sound of your hand mic, which, like I say, is nothing to shove out of bed, Roger.
Well, I appreciate knowing that. I'll definitely be looking for that. If you have a channel, I'll subscribe to it, and we'll get to listen to it that way. I think I keep my computer audio speakers. I'm using a headset on the rig. A lot of times I listen on the computer through the SDR, but at the moment we're listening to the rig through a pair of Bluetooth headphones. I decided, with my rolling desk chair here, I had to go with the wireless headset because I'm continually rolling over the wire, man.
Roger. Now, is that the same level as your hand mic? Can you go to your hand mic if it's available, and let me just see something?
Oh, I'm sorry. This has been the hand mic the whole time. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay. I guess we had a little fading conditions. You dropped down quite a bit audio-wise, and I'm looking at your audio off the receiver. A lot of the Qsos on YouTube are a mic in the room. It's usually the camera mic that they're picking all this up on, and it sounds more like the room than it does the actual transmission. But we do everything direct, and so the it is exactly what it is, Roger.
Oh, that'll be great. Yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. The only way to get a true picture is to feed the output of the receiver or a receiver directly. What are you recording it using? Go ahead.
It's a computer which is recording audio-video, Roger.
Okay, very good. Well, this has been a very educational Qso for me. I'm certainly glad I hooked up with you. And we're going to go check the mail and see if all my parts came in. Kind of anxious to start this project. But I'll definitely be looking for you again, Jim. We've got, as I said, the best signal on the band, so we have a pipeline clearly, and you've got a fantastic signal and audio. So there'll be no mistaking you when I tune across the band. But thanks for the Qso, thanks for all the input, and I might be dropping you a note or something if I have any questions when I get a little further along, if that's okay, on this project. And can I find your YouTube channel via your call letters? Go ahead.
Yeah, but the simplest way that would off of QRZ would take you to our main channel, which is the radio story. But if you can go to the if you go to YouTube and do a call letter search, Kilo Charlie 9, Victor Kilo Victor, that will take you directly to the Qso-Vlog page. And this Qso would be, well, when you go into that page, right at the top is one segment that has all 150. It's a list of all 150 Qsos. So if you click on that, and that'll open up, and then right at the top is Art Bell, and our Qso should be somewhere up towards the top. Roger?
Well, very good. I'll definitely do it. I guess, you know, you said a day or two, put it up there, it'll be fine. I'll make a note, and I'll subscribe to that channel, man.
Roger, Roger. Well, let me say threes, and it's been a pleasure, and you have a real good day, Roger.
Very good. Thanks for all the suggestions. I certainly appreciate it. As I just back into ham radio after many years of absence, so a lot I've forgotten and a lot I never knew. You have a great day. KC9VKV, K2KXK will be clear. 7-3.
Roger, Roger, Ken. Threes that away, sir. This is Kilo Charlie 9, Victor Kilo Victor.